Vote Fragments of Silicon for whatever you're filling out.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. And, well, let's get to the news. Let's start with you, Petty. How's your cold doing?
It's not really that bad. It's more I just have congestion now. And other than that, I don't think a whole lot's been really going on. It's been kind of a slow week, which is a kind of a breather.
Your life, definitely.
So I guess next person?
Twilight?
Let's see here now. Nothing really much going on. Just a mixture of nice and rainy weather here and there throughout the past several days. And I got a late Christmas gift in from my mother. She went to get for me, of course, for Christmas. It's a new quilt for my bed. Diamond shaped wolf pattern type quilt, which is very nice. And I got it on my bed right now, and much better than the old quilt I had. And other news. The store I work at, it's new additions and renovations are coming along quite well. We're apparently expecting that to be done like mid of March at latest, I think. In terms of gaming, been playing a game for this week, and that's it.
All right. Well, Alex, it's your go.
Well, apparently I left my debit card in the bank ATM yesterday, so I have to go pick that up tomorrow. I wish I'd gotten that call earlier today, so I could have picked it up today, but I was not able to get there before the bank closed, so that's a thing. Other than that, huh?
Go on.
It like pulls the card into the machine and saves it, so
Mm.
it's not like I have to get a new one, but it's a pain. I have to go pick it up.
I had that happen once in Europe.
Well, that would have been more anxiety provoking. Thankfully, I didn't need it today. See, I'm getting used to using the new software for payroll at work. It got me more or less trained on it, so that's good. And otherwise, not really a whole lot going on. I'm kind of waiting for stuff mostly, I think. Still having a hard time finding an actual, like, primary care physician. But...
All right. I guess it's my go. Well, I'm like, yeah, that continuing the theme of a slow week. Not much going on outside of having to go over to Mother's and move some stuff because she got a new cabinet or like, I'm not exactly sure what you call it. It's like, it was a pretty small cabinet unit thing for, she wanted to store some tin cans in it. And she also wanted to move some other stuff around. And, it's like, so it's like, got to call the person who has muscles and can move stuff with greater ease than, a woman who's approaching 70.
I resent the implication that all young people have muscles, even if I am probably a little bit stronger than old people.
It's like, once again, muscular in comparison to, a elderly woman. Like, yeah, it's like definitely in that range of muscular activity.
Yeah,
Outside of
no.
that, it's like outside of that, not much going on in my world either. No. I suppose no news is good news.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, given that seems to be the accumulated news for the week, not all of them can be fraught with adventure or anything. Merrily, we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week, once again, is Joseph Tringali of Digital Continue.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's been a while. Like, been a few years, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah, I think maybe like a year and a half.
Probably. It was around the time of whenever Next Up Heroes came out.
Okay, yeah, that was almost 2 years then.
Yeah,
I think that was like spring, summer.
Yeah,
2 years.
Most of that has to do with the fact that I don't think you've released anything until a few months ago, at least not in terms of new projects.
We did. We had Jumpstream, which is kind of like a more of an experimental game on Mixer.
Right.
Probably the latest project, but yeah, Next Up was definitely our last big release.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're here to talk about Super Mash. And for those who might not know what this game is, or games as the case may be, what is Super Mash?
Super Mash is a game that makes games.
Now, when you say that, it's to put a point on it, it's a game that mixes genres together. It's not just like you are it's not a game maker tycoon game or anything like that, which we've showcased on the show before. But this is a game that combines things like a platformer with a JRPG or an action adventure game, a Zelda-like, with a Metrovania, and so on and so forth. And I suppose the first question that comes to mind is just how did you come up with such a premise?
I don't know. Like, I mean, it kind of this was one of the first ideas that I had starting Digital Continue. We were kind of small back then, so we really didn't have the resources to do it. But it just came to me. It was, I don't know. It was kind of like having just a reflection on what it's like to make games. And even though this game obviously isn't like a game dev game, like I think the feeling of craziness, the feeling of like not really knowing what is going to come out of like what you make, like all those sorts of feelings kind of contributed to the concept.
Mm-hmm. And was there anything in particular that got this project really off the ground?
I mean, we got a little bit bigger, and we just were in a position where we could start to prototype, start to plan it out. We started working on it, while we were, most of the team was sort of on another game, so we had a good amount of time to kind of figure out the systems underneath. Mm-hmm. And then we just put everyone on it, started making it.
Hey, somebody's cat is apparently
that is my cat, who is not hungry but just howling.
My cat's all of a sudden alerted.
Cat triggers, man.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back to Super Mash here. So how did you go about the process of selecting the genres that would be showcased in Super Mash?
We had a bunch of them. We basically went through. We tried to find some genres that had commonality, so we didn't have to build 6 completely different games with completely different systems inside of every single game. But then again, we wanted to have games that were different. So really, we kind of split it up into turn-based, real-time, and then we took a look at the views. Like we want to top-down inside. So from there, we sort of took a look at some of the more popular, SNES, NES, sort of like early PlayStation 1 games and for inspiration, and just kind of picked the genres from there.
Mm. And how did you go about integrating all of these combinations together?
It's all systems driven, so we didn't really integrate it per se. We just basically built all the pieces in the different genres, and essentially built a system that kind of procedurally put them together. And so like I say in the beginning, I'm like, it's a game that makes games, and it's because like the game itself is what's making the games. It's not us going through and deciding like what connects to what and everything. I mean, we're basically like we're letting the game decide, which is why you'll get some games that are really, really hard, some games that are really easy, some games that, aren't really balanced, other games that, do things, that you've sort of never seen in games before. And, we really wanted to make this, not just us hand scripting a bunch of different combinations, because, that's been done before. We really wanted to kind of create this, this underlying system that, basically would build, unique games based on these the genre combinations.
And was doing the procedural generation for that a difficult task?
Yeah. I mean, it's the hardest game I've ever worked on. It's like you have to think, like when you build games, as a dev, like you take sort of like a craftsman approach where you really want to make and tune and sort of build things in this way that you sort of envision it and you see it. And in this game, it's like we're sort of building this thing that is going to build games, but we ourselves are not actually building those games. And so because that's sort of what we set out to do, like a lot of times you need to pull back, and instead of hand scripting or making something exactly a specific way, like you have to kind of open it up and be like, well, like let's just build interesting things for this game to kind of pull together, and then let it be the one that sort of decides like what these games look like.
That sounds incredibly complex.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it was one of those projects where it came together very late, because it's systems driven games. You need to build the systems, and then you need to fill the systems with content before the system itself can kind of take that content and build something that you can see. So for a long time, like we either had a bunch of systems done but very little content, and then we kind of caught up with the content, but the content sort of broke some of the systems, and it was like a back and forth, and it was pretty far in development before we started to see mashes that were like interesting, like mashes that kind of reflected what we thought it could maybe do, sort of at the beginning of the project.
Yeah, that sounds about right, given what we've had spoken about procedural systems in the past.
Yeah.
And how long did you guys work on this, and how big was your team?
We started pre-pro in like spring of 17. So we started full development in the end of summer of 18. So I'd say like about 2 years, with about a year and a half of like most of the people on it. And the team was probably like 20-ish, like 18 or 20 at its peak towards the end, counting like our art contractors and stuff.
Right. Well, that's a fairly sizable team for an indie game.
Yeah, no, it was a big project. I mean, 6 genres plus a sort of like a light sim on top of it,
right?
And the systems that kind of like go underneath all those genres.
Mm-hmm. I suppose we should talk about the light sim, which is the framing device. What is the story of Super Mesh? Who are these characters that you are playing as, and what are they doing? Why are they putting all these games together?
So it's a brother and sister, sort of an older sister and a teenage her teenage brother, and she owns a boutique game shop, and they're getting evicted, and they kind of stumble on this box of mysterious game carts, and they put it in, and they realize that it's sort of like a machine that mashes together games, and it's kind of based on a fictional version of our world with console makers and PC and publishers and all that sort of stuff. And so the console itself is sort of this modified version of a console that everybody is familiar with. And so the game and the story sort of goes through and reveals who this where this mysterious console comes from, the sort of like the lore and the who the developers are in the world, and basically you sort of follow them as they upgrade their shop and yeah.
It's very WarioWare-ish, being honest.
Yeah, I mean the shorter there's length modifiers and we definitely when we set the modifiers to short, we do get mashes that are pretty, that can feel like WarioWare a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that how long does an average mash last? Is it a couple minutes? Is it like 30? Does it depend on what genres you mix up?
Yeah, I mean, every genre sort of has its own length. JRPG is probably the longest. Shortest, maybe platformer. And so if you do a short, easy mash, most of the time, it's over in a couple minutes. Platformer mashes, typical platformer levels are a couple minutes, and so if you do a short one that's just one sort of piece, that'd be a couple minutes. We've had full on, sort of JRPG mashes, long ones that have been, 30 minutes, 35 minutes. The game itself, again, there's outliers. And so, there could be a mash where, the system decides that it's going to basically take away, coins from you. Your goal will be to say, collect 100 coins, and the thing will take away coins from you every time you swing your weapon. And so basically you have to balance attacking with spells and moving around the map and what enemies you kill, and so it'll be like this process where you'll kind of have to figure out how do I get money when I'm constantly dropping it, and it's you would never see that in a game because it's it's just really weird. But if that's what the system makes, then that's what it makes.
Right. Specifically, I believe these are called glitches.
Yes. Yeah. So the glitches, they're basically we used to call them boons and banes, and they still, under the hood, there's ones that are boons, which are helpful to you. There's banes are sort of harmful. Systematically they're sort of tied into what the goals are, sometimes, not all the time, and then they get kind of randomly paired with events that are appropriate for that mash. And by triggering those events, doing those events, and those could be player actions, like jumping, attacking. They can be movement. They can be transitions. They can basically be anything that your character actively does, or anything that any other entities in the mash are doing, and then those can trigger the glitches.
Right. And they are essentially chaos theory, if I'm being honest, because I've seen some footage of the game and seen some reviews, and it's been mentioned that sometimes the mashes can break from the combinations.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, breaking, it's interesting because and obviously we've been patching on PC, and there are there definitely at launch were some legit things that were broken, and what I define as broken is actually broken, where it's something that isn't working as intended. But there's a lot of things that it's not broken, it's working as intended. It's just combining together in a way that a player has never seen before, and so they can't relate to it, and so it looks broken. But if you kind of go deeper and you take a step back, you're like, okay, yes, every time I jump, it forces my character to move to the left, and it's again, no commercial game would ever ship with that as a mechanic, but in Super Mash, it's the mashes, and depending on the glitches and the events, you could get a game like that. But I've gotten a lot of those games, and you can beat them. You just have to think differently. And so it's a lot of times, if there's actions that result in you moving your character or forcing your character in a certain direction. You can basically jump with that character in front of a collidable object, and then use that collidable object to stop you from moving in the other direction. And you keep kind of doing that and traversing through the levels, or traversing through like the action adventure overworld, and you can progress. It's just thinking like there's just like a different way you have to kind of approach it. There's a lot of sort of fundamental things as a game developer that you would never do that like this system kind of does do. But it also creates these interesting experiences that you wouldn't get, like these challenges that again, they're meshes, so they're short, and it's like you're not playing a 7 or 8 hour game where you're basically triggering random character movements, but like there is a lot of fulfillment in overcoming and like beating the system.
Right. And in terms of mashing up the genres, is it like do you have to pick two different ones, or is there something that happens if you say pick platformer and platformer?
Yeah, no, you can mesh the same genre. It'll just make you a platformer. It'll pick different levels. It'll pick characters, enemies. It'll assign different enemy behaviors, and it runs the same system. It's just you won't sort of have mechanics or content, goals from play types kind of from that other genre.
I see. And now there's 6 genres that have been included at launch.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that it's been mentioned, like on the store pages here, that this game will be supplemented with content updates and DLC. Will that include like future genres?
Yeah, I mean, I think the DLC is, and the future content is definitely going to revolve around genres. I mean, we just did a content patch with some new levels, some new art, new tile sets, lots of fixes, and some optimizations. But I think the bigger updates in the future will definitely be new genres.
I'm not sure how much you could talk about that, but what ideas do you have for new genres for Super Mash here?
I mean, we have one that we're actively working on. Hopefully, will be summertime. We have another one that we had in development with the game. It was just too much, so we sort of had to postpone it. But we have all the art built for that one, so I'd love to get that one in at some point. And then we have a couple genres that we have are sort of more in the planning phases. So yeah, there's a lot of genres out there, a lot of 2D genres. So right.
Yeah. I am assuming that the genres are sticking to the 2D mold, given the extra complexity that it would take to say a first-person shooter.
Yeah. I mean, it's the game is 2D, so I do believe it is possible, in a different game to combine 2D and 3D. It's just it would be a new game.
Yeah.
Not Super Mesh.
Yeah. Now, was this game built in Unity or Unreal or any particular middleware?
Yeah, so Unity at the foundation, but it's actually built using Entitas, which is like a ECS, like a component driven middleware. So what you kind of have to do, because in this game, like everything in this game is like a piece, and so it's like, and because so many things could be combined with so many other things, like we basically had to break it down into 1,000 different pieces, and so we had to use something like Entitas, otherwise it just wouldn't have been possible to make it.
Right. And never heard of this particular middleware before. Like, how did you come across it?
One of our engineers, I don't know specifically how he came across it, but I mean, ECS is, that's what Unity is doing. Like Unity in the next couple years is going to be all ECS. Like, so this particular, person was sort of ahead of the curve in terms of making it. And so, just because like the Unity ECS stuff wouldn't have been ready in time for us to actually use it for the game.
Right. And now, this game has kind of an unusual launch structure. That is to say, so this game got revealed at the Nintendo Indie World showcase in October.
Yep. December, I think.
Right. And the next day, or I think that same day, it had a surprise launch on, of all things, the Epic Game Store. I suppose my first question is, how did this game come to be picked for the Epic Game Store?
I mean, we, at Fifth Cell, like we obviously had good relations with all the, the engine companies. And so, we knew people at Epic and, so when I, went to Digital Continue, kind of maintain those relationships and, they're always, interested in seeing, what's out there, like, whether it's using their tech, not using their tech, and so, we found out they were working on a store and, we talked, we showed them Super Mesh and, they thought it would be a very unique, cool indie fit for, their first year out. And, so we decided to launch with them.
And how's the performance been?
It's been okay. I think it's, and you can look at the game. I mean, the game is a console game. It's designed with the console motif. It's, it's controller, definitely controller first. I think it's got a Nintendo-ish aesthetic, which is why we announced with Nintendo, so I think that like, it's great. It's great to be out there. It's great to be getting feedback. It's great to, have people play and it sort of allows us time to, focus on, polishing and making, sort of the final adjustments for the console launch in May.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the Epic Game Store, well, it's never easy to ask this, but it's something I have to continue to ask because the volatility involved. But, has the reaction been positive?
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't seen any negativity. Like, I respect everybody's freedom of choosing to play the game on whatever platform they want to play it on. And, it's like, that's a consumer decision but I also respect,
Right.
any company that wants to go out there and basically like, launch a store. Like, I mean, the value proposition of the Epic store is incredible. I mean, there's so many free games that, they give their users. I mean, it's ridiculous, when you think about it.
That's not really what I'm getting at, though. It's more, well, the targeted harassment. Like, it's like, at least last year, there was a lot of, this game showing up on the Epic Game Store. That made people mad for various reasons. Let's go harass the developers. Like,
yeah, there's been. I mean, I haven't really seen any harassment, and I'd say like, it really depends. I mean, it depends on what your messaging is. It depends on like there's just a lot of factors that go into it, and like it's not really relevant to us, or Super Mash. It's like my opinion is, the Epic Game Store is great. It's great for, gamers. It's great for the, sort of the ecosystem. It's amazing for developers. I mean, they've been tremendously supportive, financially and, sort of as a platform for, developers, a lot of developers that, might not otherwise have been able to make games, without them. So, I'm a fan,
I mean, it makes sense considering you went in with the platform. I mean, I can't imagine I can't imagine a reason why people would go in, but that's usually financial, but that's kind of beside the point. Anyway, also in terms of the PC release, was that an early access release?
I mean, it wasn't branded as early access, but I think, in general with PC, like you're able to update and fix a lot easier than you are with console. So we're our turnaround time on fixes and patches and feedback and stuff is definitely it's able to be a lot faster on PC.
Right. So is that why you chose to launch on PC version? You got the console Nintendo Switch version coming out in May. That's a gap.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and consoles just take time. I mean, the certification process takes time. Getting the storefronts up, like signing, like figuring out your marketing plan and launch window and porting the game. There's just a lot involved.
Right. Have you been porting the games yourself, or porting the game yourself?
We did a bunch of it, and we're working with an external studio, sort of for support.
Pretty typical these days.
Yep.
And in terms of the Nintendo Switch version, is it going to how do I put this? Is it going to launch with any exclusives? Like, is there any going to be like Nintendo stuff in it? Is there going to be any particular Switch functionality in the game?
Nothing that is on our side. Obviously, like the Switch itself lends itself to like the tabletop play and the handheld and our TV. So just in general, like you can play your Switch in a bunch of different ways. But it'll be the same release across the different consoles.
Right. And I suppose moving beyond the Nintendo Switch version, are you, in terms of other console releases, are you looking towards the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, or are you looking ahead to the next generation of consoles?
No, we'll launch at the same time on Xbox and PS4 and Switch.
Okay, so all console versions are being done simultaneously.
Yep.
Yeah. Console-specific presentations.
Yeah.
Anyway, and in terms of the PC release, will this game be coming to Steam at a certain point in time?
Probably.
And sounds about right. Like probably about a little under a year from now. It's like that's the typical EGS exclusive window. No. But anyway, now in terms of computer versions, are you looking like is this game Windows only, or is there a Mac version as well?
Windows only is out there right now. We have built Mac. We just got to get around to fixing some stuff on it. Just really focused on getting the consoles out since there's a lot that goes into making that happen. But yeah, we definitely want to get a Mac build out there at some point.
And there's no Linux build, because this is one thing I really do not like about the EGS. They do not support Linux. But at least in the period that this thing is on there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you could release a Linux version if you wanted to.
I'm like, look, all I know is that the EGS purports to not support Linux.
I know, but I'm pretty sure that if that's, and I don't know if that's the case or not, but...
I mean, like, as long as it's compatible with something else, too, you might be able to put in a Linux version?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Making things compatible with Linux is a pain in the ass anyway, since Linux is not really, like, one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that... like if you're a Linux user, you're on Steam because they actually support Linux. They have made great strides in Linux gaming, but that's a topic for another day. But anyway, now I'm going to see if my colleagues have any further questions for you.
I think all mine have been answered.
Mine have been answered.
Yeah, I'm interested in how it ends up playing, because I know that you can get into some kind of complicated territory when you're mixing and matching mechanics and stuff, but it sounds like you certainly have considered that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what the game makes for you. So it's fine. It's exciting.
And I suppose my final question for this interview session is, can you detail us on anything that you are working on that isn't Super Mash at this point in time?
We are working on things, but can't share what they are yet.
Yeah. Once again, that's not too surprising. Anyway. So that'll about do it for this interview session. Thank you, as always, for being on our program, taking time out of your schedule, and so on and so forth. Hopefully we'll have you back on whenever your next project is ready to be talked about.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, guys.
No problem. Once again, the game is Super Mash. It's available now on the Epic Game Store for $24.99. And it is coming to consoles, the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One in May. Be sure to pick, if you don't pick it up on the PC, then pick it up on one of the consoles in a few months. Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. Welcome to the topic of discussion, and this week we are talking about Platinum Games. And I'm pretty sure the audience will know why, because it's not exactly a secret anymore. In fact, it wasn't really a secret during the weekend when we came up with this topic, but, in case you lived, you've been under a rock or whatever, Platinum Games has recently launched their Kickstarter for The Wonderful 1 Remastered.
Wonderful 101.
Sorry, yeah, The Wonderful 101. And it's been doing gangbusters.
Which kind of makes sense. The Wonderful 101 was always like a pretty interesting concept for a game that just, was launched on the Wii U and was pretty specific to the Wii U in a lot of ways. So it didn't do well on account of that.
Well, it's also because it was a Wii U game. Right. I think that, it's like I think you can, honestly, this Kickstarter has done better than the Wii U version.
Right.
That's actually little hyperbole there, because the Japanese version of this game sold 5,000 copies in its opening week, and that didn't really go up the second week. We don't know exactly how many copies this thing sold, but it's one of Nintendo's lowest selling games in a long while. It's you take whatever sales performance issues your big name Nintendo Wii U games would have, and you multiply it by a factor of 100, because the Wonderful 101 is a very niche game, kind of by design, because that's kind of Platinum Games' whole spiel. But that being said, people were pretty shocked that the Wonderful 101 Remastered Kickstarter is doing this well, this fast. And to that I say, they're fucking Platinum Games. They're not...
Oh, no, any Kickstarter to Platinum Games, this game will probably do better as a Kickstarter for Platinum Games than it would if Platinum Games just released it without the Kickstarter, because this is... Kickstarters are really good for getting a existing, or a thing that was going to do well possibly anyway, more publicity and stuff, rather than...
Oh, yeah. Kickstarters are part marketing. But, also people do not understand finance part infinity. No, they couldn't just use the 10-cent investment to fund this particular project. I'm like, we don't know the details, but you don't just get money for whatever.
Yeah, in general, money comes with earmarks on it that says, congratulations, you have this money to use for this, and if you don't use it for that, too bad.
Right. It's like, it's not, here's some money. Why don't you use it for whatever? You know, you want to remaster the Wonderful 101? Sure. This does not fucking happen. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Although in this case, didn't they have to like partially buy out the license from Nintendo or something? Which, admittedly, because it did so poorly before, is probably why Nintendo was willing to sell it.
Well, so they have mentioned in an interview that Nintendo still owns the IP. It's just Nintendo is fine with this game being released on other platforms because, well, once again, like it can only help.
And they are still releasing it on the Switch, and the Switch was the only, guaranteed platform, although it cleared the stretch goals for the PC and other console versions in, like, I think half an hour or some shit.
About, it reached the mill in about 12 hours.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Yeah. But once again, like, people were surprised that this Kickstarter had, it's the most high-profile Kickstarter in a while, quite honest. But once again, like...
And they do seem to have learned, well, partially it's because it's a re-release, but they don't seem to be, like, trying to super overpromise here. Well, there is, like, one, like, some other project thing on there, but I don't know what's up with that, but it's not, like, 4 new modes.
Well, it's the pedigree involved here. Like, first of all, it's Platinum Games. It's not, a newly established indie developer who had prominent developer X attached to it, or something like that. It's like it's Platinum Games. They have a very proven track record. Secondly, it's a port, not a new game. It's like it's much easier to, with expectations. I mean, porting a game still costs money. It costs more than $50,000 for a game of this scale. I'll tell you that much, which tells you that this game was already done. But they just needed to gauge interest. And more to the point, this game is also coming out in April. At least the Switch version is coming out. But there's more going on here. This is also the first project that will be published by Platinum Games. Granted, they are, they're going to have physical versions that will be published by other companies. I think I saw Nighthawk listed as the Western publisher and Dangan Entertainment as the Japanese publisher, and oh boy, that's a fucking mess. I'm like, Dangan Entertainment, has come under fire for allegations of, let's see, not paying developers, abuse, lovely stuff, kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but, it's not super understood how attached they are to this project. I mean, they apparently helping them back last fall. But, that's the kind of thing that doesn't really matter because this is the thing that's happening. Like, and once again, the Wonderful 101 Remastered is a pretty unique situation where Kickstarter was probably the best option because, the other big option is usually publisher or investor interest. And I can totally understand why there's not a lot of interest in funding a port of a very failed Wii U game.
Even though it was a game that had a, interesting hook at least, but that's not how it registers corporately.
No, I'll be honest, if I were in that position, I would not fund it. Like, it's like, this game was a fucking disaster in terms of sales. And, in terms of, getting money back, iffy proposition, it's like, I also, I'm not sure how much of this, like, I'm pretty sure that the reason that the Wonderful 101 Remastered is getting this much attention is more Platinum Games than the game itself. Because not super, not infinite space levels of unknown Platinum Games projects. But once again, this is a game that did really fucking poorly and has a really niche-y art style, design, what have you. So, yeah, them going to Kickstarter made the most sense. Like, dubious motivations aside, this is a thing that's happening now. And it's still going on. 29 days to go. It's clocked in about 1.3 million. And, the next stretch goals are Luca's First Mission, which is a brand new side-scrolling adventure starring a young hero. Yeah, the thing that Gollix was talking about before is we don't exactly know what this thing is going to be. We don't know if it's going to be, just an addition to the bigger Wonderful 101 game, or if it's going to be a Bloodstained Curse of the Moon situation.
Yeah. Still, it's only one, and I think there might be like another thing somewhere, but that's it. They're not like ridiculously overpromising with like stupid numbers of platforms and like tons of side modes and stuff.
Well, once again, it's a port, it's a remastering, so they're kind of limited in what they can do.
Yeah, less risk there.
It's like, once again, this isn't an unknown quantity. In fact, it's a pretty well-known quantity in terms of it's a game that actually exists. Like, you could go onto eBay and get it today if you have and a Wii U. Like, you can play this game. It exists in reality. So that helps. That helps a lot. One of the biggest question marks around the Wonderful 101 ports is the whole gamepad thing. Because, this game didn't make, say, Nintendo Land levels of using the gamepad, but it still had a pretty strong attachment to the gamepad.
Yeah, it like to the extent of, I believe it has like some like almost RTS mechanics that you use the gamepad for.
Yeah. Right. It's just, the gamepad integration was kind of wonky from all the reviews I've seen.
Well, the Switch still has a touchscreen, but obviously the other systems don't.
Right. I mean, I suppose the PlayStation 4 version could use that pad in the middle.
Yeah, the touchpad.
But the Steam version, not a guarantee that you're gonna have the PlayStation 4 controller or whatever.
Yeah. PC version has mouse, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, that'll work well in its own way, provided it it works better than the Wii U version.
Yeah,
that's kind of
if they program, like, it's a good system to use for the things they're using it for, if they use it well,
Yeah, I mean that was kind of one of the things about the Wii U version. It had that writer recognition issue, that plagued so many DS and anything that used a stylus or like you had to be artistic with. Like it's like
remember not capacitive touch screens.
Right, the fucking resistive touch screens. I am glad they are a thing of the past. Like, so hopefully the porting process will go smoothly. And the thing that has been confirmed to be new at the 1 million mark is the time attack mode, which is being billed as a speedrunner's dream. It's going to be a time attack mode. If you don't know how a time attack mode functions, welcome to video games.
Indeed.
Yeah. And latest stretch goal is at 1.75 million, the remix soundtrack. and it's being
the sound. There's a Kickstarter tier for getting the unabridged, like the full soundtrack for this. It is not a cheap tier.
not as surprising because I think it's a vinyl release.
No, the vinyl release was even higher, but just the basic, like, it's like a 3 CD set or something.
Yikes!
Dang.
Yeah, that's
5 CD set.
Dang.
Oh, they're using actual CDs and not Blu-rays?
This is
Presumably,
music.
yes. Most CD players don't do Blu-rays, I think.
Well, the reason why I asked, Square Enix usually puts out the Final Fantasy XIV soundtracks on Blu-ray because there's so much music.
Yeah, there was also an even higher tier for a vinyl record.
Yeah, they're not doing a Blu-ray, as far as I know.
Pretty sure all of the vinyl record things have sold out completely, except for the ones that come with like fucking, like the very highest tiers that have like physical trophies and shit.
Yeah, and
also sold out. The jackets that like Wonderful One wears, the masks, yeah. They have a lot of physical goodie tiers for this one.
Yeah, now keep in mind, that's another thing that this Kickstarter is going to be funding, or where a significant, not an insignificant portion of the money, they're offering physical goods, and anywhere in the world, according to the Kickstarter. Like,
yeah, custom sweet ass jackets. There's a reason the sweet ass jacket tier is,
yeah,
fucking,
live research.
Probably more than I have on me.
It's like almost $2,000.
Yep.
I don't think anyone here has $2,000 on them.
Yeah.
Nope.
The lowest tier with it was $1,500. Again, it's sold out, like $1,500, $165. It's Japanese Kickstarter. It's in yen, so it's like approximates.
Right. I mean, it's not exactly 1-to-1, but you know, for the purposes of this discussion, it'll do. Yeah. And yeah, the remix soundtrack is also being billed with a special guest star. We do not have an idea of what that means. Like,
they're platinum, so it could be a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, or it could be a secret guest character. You know, like somehow Bayonetta's involved in this, like, or you know, some of her music, something like that. Like, you know, that is the other dimensionality here.
It ends up being Yoko Taro.
Like, it's like, I can't discount that.
I was about to say he's crazy enough to fucking do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Like, and they've got 12 stretch goals lined up. We apparently the last one being Kamina unblocks everyone. Like, by the way,
yeah, because this is that guy who does all the blocking people on Twitter and saying witty things.
In fact, one of the Kickstarter rewards is, you know, you will get a personalized message by Kamina, and then he will block you. Yeah, I'm like, but shockingly, I am not part of the block club. I have spoken to Kamina, and I have never gotten blocked.
Well, I mean, most of the people he blocks are blocks for saying something dickish.
Right. Like, or, you know, they ask him where a port of Bayonetta 2 is.
Or questioning his artistic decisions in some kind of way.
Or it's Tuesday and he hasn't had coffee yet.
I didn't say they're all for good reasons.
No, but I had to get that in.
Yeah.
One thing we know is not in the cards is there will be no Xbox One port. They are not interested in bringing this game to the Xbox One. You know, that could be for a few reasons. The current relationship with Microsoft is strained because of the whole scale-bound issue.
Yeah.
It's like, keep in mind, it's a Japanese company, so
Yeah, number of Xboxes in Japan is also probably a consideration.
like just simple business there.
Yeah.
Also worth noting that the PC version is specifically a Steam release. They probably have to list this these days because the Epic Game Store.
Yeah.
Like, so if this got poached, oh jeez, I don't.
The hate and vitriol would be fucking palpable.
Yeah, I don't want to. It's like, this is the kind of shit I was talking about in the interview. It's like, I don't want to. It's like, I don't care how dickish Kamina is. It's like, I don't want any Platinum Games people fucking harassed. I don't want harassment and death threats ever. It's like, that shit is obvious, and yet I have to be here and just be exasperated because people can't handle their shit. Yeah, very frustrating. Anyway, in terms of will this lead to another wonderful 101 game? I suspect that's part of the grand ploy here.
Yeah, because this was originally set up to be a potential franchise on the Wii U before it, nobody bought it.
Right.
Which mostly Wii U.
Yeah, this is another reason why Nintendo's probably fine with it appearing on the PlayStation 4 and the PC, because it's it doesn't help as an exclusive in any capacity. Not for the Switch, certainly not for the fucking Wii U, since this is a game that came out in 2013, and the Wii U is a dead system. What sense does it make to keep it on a very dead platform? None. Like, considering that it does make sense to not bring every game from the Wii U because, once again, gimmickry. Like, I really doubt we'll ever see a Nintendo Land port to any other system, just because of how integrated the gamepad use was. You also do have the getting back to the concern about ports. You also have the Zombie U / Rayman Legends issue where the game was very clearly designed for the gamepad, and it no matter how many ports it gets, it's still best on that system. Like the console, the ports to other systems for Zombie U better. And Rayman Legends, no matter how many platforms that gets, it was still built for the Wii U. It still has that Wii U functionality that makes it awkward on other platforms. And hopefully the wonderful 101 can evade this. But in terms of Nintendo is fine with this because they don't have to put any of their money up in reinvigorating this franchise. And I can see it from their perspective. Would the wonderful 101 2 be a Switch exclusive or whatever? Probably, because Nintendo still has IP rights.
I think you mean the wonderful 102.
Whatever they end up calling it.
Wonderful 201, just to fucking piss everyone off.
That would also work.
It would.
And but that's mere speculation at this point. But that gets to the other the other Platinum Games thing, and the whole Tencent investment. And they recently put up a 4 teaser. They have 4 announcements planned for the, let's say, near future. And the wonderful 101 Kickstarter is announcement 1. So speculation is abound about what the other 3 are. I'm like,
I guess, putting in our own algorithm chasing speculation here. One of them is probably going to be Bayonetta 3. Because remember, that was announced a few years ago, and we haven't seen anything from it.
Yeah, it's an updated information on Bayonetta 3 would be very high on the, hey, Platinum Games has some projects we're waiting on list.
Right. I think announcement 3 could be more on Babylon Fall, if I'm remembering correctly. That's that Platinum Games game project that people keep forgetting exists. It's the one they're doing with Square Enix that isn't any potential sequel to Nier Automata. I'm like, and its last showing, it was kind of rough, like, quite honestly. Like, granted, Nier Automata 2 or whatever is also, in the mix, like, very in the mix, considering that's probably Platinum's best-selling game ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so them being attached to a sequel, yeah, I see it happening. Something completely new and original, definitely I would see in the cards, at least one of them. Platinum Games isn't really renowned for doing too many sequel projects, quite honestly.
Mhm.
Like, maybe that's due to circumstances or whatever. Like, maybe one of these projects is Okami 2. Like,
And everyone loses their shit.
I'm like, well, remember that got jokingly announced a few months back?
Yeah, Okami Actual 2, not side story.
Well, it's like, I don't think anyone really wants, a Okami Den remastering.
No.
Yeah.
From what I recall, that was not terrible, but it was nowhere near as good as actual Okami.
Well, I mean, it was a 3D action adventure game on the fucking DS.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of constrained by the systems, not just in terms of its graphics, but this was a system. This is a system with no D-pad. So
no analog stick, you mean?
Yeah, analog stick. Sorry, or circle pad, or whatever you want to call the your nub of choice.
Right. It had only digital directional input, and also no second directional input for camera control.
Yeah, I mean, and the touchscreen, but once again,
now Okami is actually a game where the touchscreen, in theory, would be great.
Yeah, in theory, but the problem with the Wii version of which also had the whole you can use the Wiimote with the with the paint. The thing is, Okami, the original Okami, wasn't built for that.
No, it wasn't. But if you built a game to do that, it could theoretically, again, not saying it does work well, just it could.
Right. But so there's a lot of. But that being said, it's hard to tell. There are so many things that people want from Platinum Games that I'm sure there are a handful of people that wish for God Hand 2 to be a thing. And we don't have a timeline for this announcement either. I think one thing that it won't be is an Astral Chain 2.
It's too soon for that, if nothing else.
Well, more to the point, that really feels like something that Nintendo themselves would announce.
Probably also that, yeah.
I mean, see also the possibility of any of their collaborations with Square Enix. Possible that Platinum would announce this, but this seems to be what Platinum Games is publishing announcements. Not their collaborations with other developers or other publishers. But only time will tell on that end. And on that note, I think that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead. Let's see. No Friday show this week. So you can sleep in on Friday.
Hooray.
Not the case next week. Like, but we'll get to that on Sunday. Coming up on the Sunday reviews, we will be having reviews of Bo-Katan, Why I Became an Angel, one of the latest releases from Manga Gamer. It's the romance-driven visual novel we talked about last week. We're calling. It's fine-ish. Like, it's an okay visual novel. Currently, I'm in the middle of chapter 3. Like, this is definitely the weak part of the visual novel for at least the romantic encounters, for reasons I'll get into on Sunday. Let's see. We have Where Angels Cry: Tears of the Fallen Collector's Edition, which is being billed as a puzzle adventure game, but I don't know. It looked like a whole hodgepodge of disconnected ideas from the trailer.
I haven't booted that up yet, but I'm going to try and play some of that tomorrow.
Yeah. And you might ask, what makes this a collector's edition? Well, according to the bullet points, the collector's edition contains a bonus story with additional 10 adventure scenes and a full strategy guide. I'm guessing that's an internal thing because I was not handed a strategy guide with the code.
I will keep an eye out for it.
Yeah. And also, just ignore them for the PlayStation 4. This is an 8-bit survival horror or psychological horror adventure game. Like, I have played about an hour of the PC version.
That's probably about all you need.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I've been too busy with the bigger games to get back to it, but it's pretty short. Like, worth noting, the PC version has 2 versions: the original and the remake. I believe the one on consoles is the remake version.
Yes, it is.
So look for all of that on Sunday, and until then, I wish you good gaming.